Where do we expect some Royals free agents to land? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener to this channel and you want to know how often we bring you episodes per week, well, it will be 5 episodes a week until about the middle of January, I believe it is, when we drop down to 3 episodes a week. But that'll be for a short time, as spring training will be right around the corner. We'll be down there, and we'll be back up to 5 episodes a week then. So always can expect Royals content weekly right here on Locked On Royals. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. As we know, the season is winding down. Right now, the World Series is knotted up at 1 game apiece. Game 3 is tonight in LA. So we still got a couple more weeks to go, or maybe just 1 more week to go, until everybody has their focus set on the 2025/2026 offseason. The weather is getting colder. As you can tell, I'm wearing a sweatshirt indoors, and I usually love the cold, but it's starting to get cold to the point where we know baseball season is behind us, and the only thing we're going to be talking about is which guys will be coming to this team, which guys will be leaving. And I thought to open up our week, it might be a good time to give some updated predictions on some guys I think the Royals might try and retain. So if you were looking for me to do every single free agent the Royals may have, we just don't have enough time in this episode to do that. But I thought I would pick 2 guys right now that I am feeling increasingly confident that they're going to be back in Kansas City. Now, if you listened to our Mailbag Friday last week, I already teased one of the names here. I feel more confident that that player is going to be back in Kansas City because of the fit, because of the cost, and where this player is in his career. So we'll start there. I feel pretty confident that Adam Frazier is going to be back in Kansas City for a couple different reasons. Number one, Adam Frazier's at a point in his career where he knows the contract will not be out there to be an everyday player. He understands likely at this point that his days of starting 150 to 155 games are behind him. He is coming off of a great season. He was healthier between the Pirates and the Royals than he was in all of 2024 in Kansas City. And there has been just this overwhelming positivity about Adam Frazier. If you talk to people in the organization or ask them questions about certain players on the roster, they love Adam Frazier, hence why they brought him back at the deadline this past season. And going into free agency, he's going to be taking on a 1-year deal. I would be floored if somebody were to offer him a 2-year contract. He's probably at the point in his career where 1-year deals are going to be the only thing that's thrown his way. So when you are at that point in your career, where would you rather be? Would you rather be at a spot you've already been in the last 2 seasons, or would you want to look for a contract, maybe a little bit more money, where you could be starting more often than you would in Kansas City, but it would be for a team that probably isn't going anywhere? He could do exactly what he did in the offseason last year, which was sign somewhere he was going to play a lot, which was Pittsburgh, and then you'll be flipped at the deadline for somebody. But I feel the Royals want to cut out that part of it. I feel the Royals want to go to him and say, we love you here. You're a great clubhouse guy, and we need depth on that bench. We need depth on the infield. We need depth in the outfield. We want to extend you that contract, and I believe that would be an incredibly affordable contract. So I would say he is going to be that first free agent off the board for the Royals. I feel they are going to bring him back. Once the season wraps up and we see some of those initial deals happen, he would be my first pick. Now, do I believe that that has to be one of the bigger moves? Of course, I don't think so. But we all know how the offseason goes about. You start off with some of the smaller moves, and then around the winter meetings, is when hopefully you can strike that big deal. Fingers crossed, the market is not what it was last year, which took forever to materialize. And I would say that this is a team that is going to need to strike on that market. They can't be sitting back waiting for, the prices to come down on everybody. We will talk about it more in the second segment if trades are going to be more likely. This is more so an episode about updating some opinions on how I see this team progressing in the next couple of months. But I do believe Adam Frazier will be that guy they bring back. I just feel that a one-year deal worth around $3 to $5 million is going to be enough to get it done. You can play him, X amount of games, 100 to 110 amount of games. I don't know how many of those he's starting, but that's a good bench piece to have considering the output that he had after the Royals acquired him at the deadline this past season. So he's number one on the list. The second guy that I'm starting to get more confident in coming back to Kansas City is Mike Yastrzemski. We've done an episode on Mike Yastrzemski already this offseason, but an article I read today kind of further proved that point of a reunion. And it was from Jim Bowden of The Athletic. I know people listening have their opinions on Jim Bowden, whether you believe him or not, but he listed the top 50 free agents available out there. The Royals were only linked to 3. And not so much linked, just seen as fits. Cody Bellinger was one, but the Royals were one of six teams, I believe it was. I would also say that Cedric Mullins was a name that they were, seen as a good fit for. And then it was Mike Yastrzemski. The difference with these other two guys is the Royals were listed among, anywhere from 2 to 6 teams. Mike Yastrzemski, the Royals were the only team that were seen as a good fit. Now, is that realistic? Is that actually truthful? No, because I'm sure that teams out there could use Mike Yastrzemski in the same way the Royals want to use Mike Yastrzemski. But in this little blurb that he wrote about Yaz, it was that at this stage in his career, as we talked about Adam Frazier, he's going to be getting a contract for being a 4th outfielder, a platoon bat. And the Royals loved him. And this was another part I thought about, which I'm not sure I really brought up as much as I should have when talking about a potential reunion between the Royals and Mike Yastrzemski. The Giants are a place, or San Francisco is a place that he called home for his entire career. Now, he's an East Coast guy. He grew up a Red Sox fan, of course, with the name Mike Yastrzemski. Kind of feels like there was no other choice, but he gets drafted, goes to the Giants, becomes a fan favorite there. And even when the Giants traded him, Buster Posey told him something along the lines of, we'll be seeing you again soon. Right. Well, basically, what I got from that, when you're a free agent, we're going to give you that deal again. Now, will the Giants extend him that offer? Certainly a possibility. And based off of how long he was there, if the Royals and Giants gave him the same contract, I'd imagine he would return to San Francisco. It's just a place he called home forever. But how often would he really be out there? One of my super bold takes of the offseason, which I can't remember if I said it on this podcast. I might have done it as a guest on another podcast or somewhere else. I can't quite remember. But anyways, I'll say it again. I believe Kyle Tucker is going to sign with the Giants. I feel that could be an area where he really thrives. I know right field's tough for left-handed bats out there because McCovey Cove, you got the wind off the bay. But I don't know. They strike me as a team that understand they need to keep up with the Padres and they need to keep up with the Dodgers. When they were in the Carlos Correa and Andrew Judge sweepstakes a couple off seasons ago, they've missed in the last couple. Now, they do have Rafael Devers and they have that contract, but we know with baseball, money really doesn't exist. If you've got the money to spend, you're going to go out there and spend the money. So that leads me to this point with Mike Yastrzemski, and I could be way off on that. Who really is 100% on free agent predictions? I just thought I would stick my neck out there a little bit more and say that he's going to go to San Francisco and not somewhere like the Dodgers, as some people predict, or maybe go back to the Cubs. Though I know the Cubs will have a lot of focus on bringing him back this offseason. But if the Giants were to go out there and say, we're going to put our focus on Kyle Tucker. We know that we've got Jung-Hoo Lee in center field. You got Elliot Ramos in left. We got to go get that big fish. Or maybe it's Kyle Tucker. Maybe it's Cody Bellinger, right? It's just a big fish they want to have for right field. That would then make me further believe Mike Yastrzemski coming back to Kansas City. He slugged .500 for the Royals when he got acquired. He was one of their top hitters, post-deadline. and the Royals are going to be platooning a lot. And what do these two guys solve? They solve the bench issues for the Royals. Those are two left-handed bats that can play around a little bit. Now, Adam Frazier can play the infield and the outfield. Yaz can play all three outfield spots. I do want to see them go after a right-handed bat because you have Jack Caglione, who's going to be on this roster, and he's a left-handed bat. Carter Jensen's a left-handed bat. You've got Vinny, who's a lefty. Massey's a lefty. Isbell's a lefty. You need to have more balance there so that your platoon lineups can work out. These guys having familiarity, though, with Kansas City and being in that price range, that feels like a no-brainer to just check those boxes and move on, right? Get two guys that do lengthen out your bench, lengthen out your outfield and your infield, and then you can go into the winter meetings already taking care of two holes on your roster. They do not need to be starters, and I don't predict them to be starters, but they can be those upgrades off the bench you just simply didn't have until the deadline of last year. So those will be my two picks for right now. Can always change. It's what I love about the offseason. You got to stay on your toes, but I believe the Royals will re-sign Adam Frazier, and I do believe they're going to re-sign Mike Yastrzemski as well. Do you believe both guys are coming back? One of those guys, or maybe none of them? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, if the market is a little bit stale, do the Royals have to pivot quickly to the trade market? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about the second sponsor that we have today in FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making the late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner for the NBA. For my picks, I'll go with Monday Night Football, Chiefs and Commanders. I will take the Chiefs to cover, and I will take the over on receiving yards for Rashee Rice. The free agent market is so easy to look over the list of and make your predictions, right? Every Mailbag Friday, I get a couple of questions of what outfielder do you think they signed? And I go into Spotrac or I go into Baseball Reference and I look at certain guys and what their market value might be. And I try to give my best guess. But as you know, if you've been listening to me long enough, Mailbag Friday questions are answered on the fly. I don't read them before. I literally read them as we're going. So when those questions come about, I don't have a sheet in front of me and I don't have those best fits always available. It's even more difficult with the trade market because I don't know who's available. I don't know who's being shopped. There will be those articles that are posted out there about, well, this team looks like they might be unloading this player, but the closer you get to winter meetings, the better feel you get as to which players are being shopped. You'll get those, rumor bombs, if you will, of this team is engaged with talks about this player, but sometimes they don't go anywhere. And for the Royals last year, they did strike early on the trade market and got Jonathan India. The difference this year is that they really don't have their Brady Singer. They have pitchers that they could trade for sure. But Brady Singer felt like the obvious pick, if you will. When you would bring up the Royals starting rotation and you said, who would you trade from this bunch? I'm not sure anybody would have traded another arm in that rotation over Brady Singer. I mean, maybe Alec Marsh, but Alec Marsh had gotten demoted from the rotation to the bullpen. You knew that if they were going to strike a deal and bring in that leadoff bat or that middle of the order bat, they were going to have to part ways with somebody that had more value than Alec Marsh. Hence why they went with Brady Singer. So this offseason, they might have somebody with more trade value, but would be much tougher to give up in a deal. Like, would you feel 100% comfortable if you knew they were floating Noah Cameron's name out there or Chris Bubich's name? Maybe you would if you heard which other names were being floated out for bats that would be available. Sometimes you don't know that, though. What I will say is this. With the way the free agent market is looking to be set up, or how it's looking to be set up, there's going to be those $30 million a year players, and I don't see the Royals being in play for really any of them. The Yankees are going to throw a lot of money at Cody Bellinger. Many teams are going to throw a ton of money at Kyle Tucker. Kyle Schwarber, who's even a DH, they are going to throw a ton of money at Kyle Schwarber. And the Royals, every time I go and look at these free agents, I say, well, to be a difference maker, like Kyle Schwarber is a difference maker for the Royals lineup. I'm not sure they're going to give him the money that he wants entering his mid-30s, and he's a DH only. That's just never really been the Royals' way. I was shocked when they wanted to give Anthony Santander what they gave him, but then you saw what the Blue Jays gave him, and it made sense why the Royals were not willing to go much higher. Like, to give somebody that type of money over 5 years that barely plays the field, and he was rarely available for the Blue Jays. But the Blue Jays are in the World Series, and they're tied up at one apiece with the powerhouse that is the Los Angeles Dodgers. I just don't want to see the Royals be stuck in the same position they were going into spring training last year, which was, we're waiting out the market. We're waiting out the market. We're waiting out the market. Couldn't really get anybody that we wanted to. And so we'll just wait till the trade deadline to add the pieces that we can. This seems like the offseason where you need to strike. Not saying you have to be the team that sets the tone. I'm not sure they're going to send the money or send the money a player's way that is going to set that type of tone. There might be a team, for example, the Cubs, that strike with Kyle Tucker very early on. I doubt it, because he's the type of free agent that can wait it out as long as possible, and somebody's going to give him the money. But for guys like maybe a Trent Grisham, who we talked about, they don't really have that luxury of waiting it out until January to get more money. Those are the type of players that might strike early because they know the first offer, the second offer they're getting might be the best one. They don't really have that luxury of gambling on somebody coming in last minute to give them $30 million a year. They're more so players that are in the $10 to $15 million range. So when you're dealing with that type of money, when you are getting into those negotiations, I'm sure the Royals will sign a couple of free agents, whether they be bench players or they be starters. Will the trade market, though, be easier to navigate and maybe make the majority of your moves through the trade route? You're not having to worry with all of those players about what the financial restraints would be. If you want to have your payroll in a certain way, a certain look, then the trade route can always be the better route, because not only are you getting cheaper players, depending on who you target, but you're getting players that might have multiple years of control where you're not overpaying them. If you go and give one of the guys coming off a great year a 2 to 3 year deal and they suck year one and year two, you got no choice there. I mean, you are stuck to that player paying them what your contract says you're paying them. With the players that you try to acquire via trade, look what the Royals did this past trade deadline and what they've done in the past. You go out there and you acquire those players that might be making, still their rookie salary. They might be in the first couple of years to their big league career and they're barely making anything. They're not even making $1 million. And so those are the type of ways you can find the value, you can find the talent and not, break your back or break your bank financially. You don't have to put yourself in a desperation mode in November and December and January. You will be in desperation mode in January if you wait back and see who signs, and then you talk with certain teams and maybe the talks ramp up, then they die down, they ramp up. This seems like it needs to be that off season where the Royals can strike a trade deal rather early, but then keep that momentum, keep things hot, keep the stove hot. Because what they did last offseason was trade for Jonathan India and then feel that they made a pretty significant move early on in the offseason, could comfortably go into the winter meetings, maybe negotiate some other stuff, but they weren't able to get that huge name again until Carlos Estevez very late in the offseason. I would love for the Royals to have everything shored up, no questions, by the time pitchers and catchers report in February. You get that done, and there's not going to be those anxious feelings about certain position battles or, oh, what are you going to expect out of this guy? I mean, it's really got to be his make it or break it year. I don't want too many make it or break it guys. And if you jump on the market, whether it be trade or free agency, that's a way to shore up a lot of your roster. So if you go out there and sign Mike Yastrzemski and Adam Frazier, that's fine. But not long after that, I would love to see the Royals try to strike a deal. And if trades are more likely, if that feels like a more suitable market for you, then by all means, be that first team to the table. Do you believe the Royals should go for the trade route over the free agency route? You let us know in the YouTube comments below. For our final segment, we're going to talk about a player or multiple that you need to buy stock in going in the next year. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about the first and title sponsor of today's episode, which is Gametime. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it can be incredibly frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go download Gametime today. We still have an entire offseason to go, but sometimes it can make you feel a little bit better when we already start looking to pitchers and catchers reporting. I know I'm one of those people. I'm just more of a baseball junkie that once the season really comes to a close and it all settles in and the stories aren't as rampant as they once were, I got no choice but to turn to February and when these guys actually get back out on the field and we can watch some of the live bullpen sessions and we can watch batting practice. And I'll try my best to put some more legitimate stock into guys, whether it be rising or falling, when I'm actually out there and can have my eyes actually see them in person. For now, as you would know, we're going off of the end of the season and maybe what they were able to build off of. And I'm trying not to fall in love with a couple of guys just because they had a strong September. That really can't be the case here. A perfect example, Luinder Avila and Carter Jensen. They finished the year strong so that going into next year, they will be a hot name or two that people will be talking about in spring training of watch out for these guys. They played really well in September. And it very well could translate into them making the roster and having a really good start to the season. But am I banking on it? Am I counting on it? Likely not. I feel that's unfair to put the pressure on two guys whose only taste of big league action is literally 1 month of baseball. 1 month of Major League Baseball, I should say. They, of course, had full seasons at the minor league level. The one guy I feel uber confident in, really taking that next step, and I've brought it up before, but I want to hammer in that point. My guy to watch is Steven Cruz. If Steven Cruz can stay healthy, Steven Cruz can be the best pitcher in that bullpen for Kansas City. I really believe he's got the lights out and powerful stuff that even the likes of Lucas Erceg doesn't have. Steven Cruz can overpower you. My big issue with him is that because of his size, because of the mechanics, the bigger bodied bullpen guys seem to end up on the injured list more often than not. They're not as mobile, and he's not a mobile big guy. You can have the back problems when you're 6'7", 270 pounds like he is. I mean, he and Estevez are gargantuan-sized human beings. And Estevez had the back problems in spring training that set him back a little bit, and it took him a long time to get to that high-powered level. Cruz is the only one on the Royals roster that I believe, when healthy, could hit 100 every single time. Now, it's not just the 100 to 102 mile an hour fastball. It's the 96 mile an hour cutter. It's the 92-mile-an-hour slider. And his big jump this past season was not just the availability. I know he had the injury that set him back, but it also made me feel better about his decline. I thought his decline was going to happen way earlier just because he was an unproven commodity. He was so good to begin his time in Kansas City, and then you just expected the other shoe to drop. It was the same way with Taylor Clark. Like, Taylor Clark pitched so well, the other shoe dropped, but then credit to him, he picked it back up and was top 5 in whip, I believe, among all relievers. So Taylor Clark, I thought, had a really good year, but Taylor Clark doesn't have overpowering stuff. If I was to pick somebody to replace Estevez, whether it be next year or the year after that, it wouldn't be Lucas Erceg. It would be Steven Cruz, because Steven Cruz has the stuff that you just don't want to face late in games. And his big jump, yes, was the availability. It was also the command. He significantly cut down the walks, and that was a talking point in spring training, was that his mechanics smoothed out a little bit. He had better command of that cutter, better command of that slider, and his slider can be devastating because now he's throwing more strikes with the cutter and the fastball. And if you throw those efficiently, that's going to set up your slider, as we all know. So I feel out of that bullpen. It's why I'm not, for them going out there and spending money on a back-end reliever. Maybe a lefty, maybe a reunion with Tim Hill, because I thought he was incredibly effective for the Yankees the last couple of years, and to have that funky angle from the left side wouldn't hurt the Royals bullpen for sure. But that back three, those are the three that I want. You don't need to bring back Hunter Harvey and roll the dice on his availability. You've got your three. If Erceg, Estevez, and Cruz have a clean and healthy spring training, I feel dang good about what those guys can do early on in the season. The weather's cold. You've got the high-powered stuff. Cruz can be an option that you turn to close out games, and he just wasn't counted on to do that this past season because you had others that could. You could turn to Erceg. You could turn to Schreiber. You could turn to Harvey maybe if Estevez wasn't available to go. You could even turn to Taylor Clark. But if the Royals want to reach that ceiling of their bullpen going from top 5 to top 2 maybe, I believe a lot of that hinges on Steven Cruz, because Lucas Erceg needs to have that pressure taken off of him. Same goes for Carlos Estevez. Estevez is going to have the unfortunate pressure because he led the league in saves. So when you lead the league in saves, that's technically the bar for a lot of people. Well, if he did it once, why can't he do it again? Why can't he have 40-plus saves again? Much of that comes down to the Royals putting him in positions to close out games, right? Because I've never believed saves are the best measure for how good a reliever might be. Because you could have a team that wins 112 games, you have an average closer, but maybe he entered a lot of those games with a 3-run lead or a 2-run lead. Now, the Royals only had 82 wins, and Estevez had 40-plus saves, so he was a part of many of those victories, but he doesn't have the most, unbelievable, powerful stuff out of the bullpen. It's Cruz. Lucas Erceg's got the best changeup of the bunch, but if I was to put somebody up against a guy with a runner at third and less than 2 outs, I feel Steven Cruz can get to that level where you want him in that spot. I mean, it's tough to hit a 6'7", 270-pound guy that's got the long arms, and he's able to reach basically halfway down the mound or halfway between the mound and home plate, and then he's firing 98 to 102. But, that's just a unique thing to have out of the bullpen. As I said, Chris Young was so incredibly tough to hit for years because he was 6'10", didn't throw hard, but that 88 to 89 looks like 94 to 95 when you're 6'10", and you've got the reach, and you go halfway to home plate before you release it. Steven Cruz already throws 98 to 102. He gets halfway down the mound, it can look like 105. I mean, that's how ferocious that stuff can be. So right now, I don't want to do too many players. I might try to do this each and every week, a guy to buy stock in, and maybe somebody I'm not as high on. But Steven Cruz, he's got the stuff to be the best reliever in the Royals bullpen next year. Are you as high on Steven Cruz as I am? Definitely let us know in the YouTube comments below. But that'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we will bring you a brand new episode yet again, this time much earlier than our evening episode on the Monday. I'll expect to have it out before noon tomorrow. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.